Welcome in the arena. My name's Allison Klein. Today, I am really excited to be joined by David Aronchick, CEO of Expanso. Welcome to the program, David.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be here.
So, David, this is the first time you're on the show, so why don't we just do a brief background on your history in the tech sector and how you became the founder and CEO of Expanso?
Sure thing. First of many, I hope. I've been doing tech for a long time. That's what these gray hairs in my beard mean. I started way back in the day at Microsoft. I have worked at Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Microsoft again, and now startup. And I've been a startup founder. This is now my fourth startups that I have founded. I've definitely gone around the bend. Um, as far as the CEO of Expanso, what I found is that I was very lucky to be part of the early group at Kubernetes, which was a open source an open source distributed compute system, which really kicked off a lot of revolution in the mid 2010s. And not just them; they were built on the history of many other folks. But it really did change the way that people thought about things. Previously, most folks thought about a single big machine, and then, I'm going to deploy my jobs and get that running. Kubernetes, among others, were one that really said, hey, you know what? Actually, it might be a little bit easier to spread your machine jobs or spread your jobs all over these various machines, over an entire cluster of them. And the reason I bring this up is, I realized at the time that compute was part of it, but we kept hearing from customers that data was a part of it as well. How do you think about data in the same structured way, where you're like, hey, you know what? It's nice to have all your data in a single place, but it'd be really nice if you could figure out a way to treat all this data that was spread over these various machines in the same way, where you can just say, hey, you know what? I need this data, or I need you to go collect this or run it or whatever. And not, what the difference between compute and data is that it turns out it's not just, inside a single, cluster or cloud. It may be across many clouds. It may be on-prem. It may be all these various things. And I kept waiting for the industry to come around and get that going. Never ended up happening. So in 2022, I founded the open source project, which ended up becoming Expanso in 23. And I've been CEO ever since.
Now, I was thinking back to Kubernetes, and obviously this has been foundational to cloud computing and in the way that cloud architectures are built and managed. When you think about the scale that comes out of that background, how do you see abstraction and scale working for data? And what did you learn from Kubernetes to actually lay the foundation for that?
Yeah, that's a terrific question. The the first and most fundamental thing, I'll take the second half of your problem first, is the idea of being declarative. So, again, for those that aren't deep in the space, one thing that with Kubernetes was really revolutionary about was that everything in the system was declarative, and it allowed you to push a job and say, hey, when the stuff gets to this final, you're done. But until it gets there, I want you to take care of it and do the rest of it, right? Before that, most stuff was much more imperative, meaning like you would wait, you would tell the system, hey, check, go do this. Oh, now I need to check again. Now I need to rerun this. I need to figure out what changed, what didn't change, all that kind of stuff. And that was really a big deal at the time. To have a system take over, to have a system have an expectation of the final state, and then it do all the work to make sure it got there. Now that required a lot of architecture in order to make that happen. But that was really, really powerful, and it stuck with me for a long time. Um, in the data space, what you see is a lot of the same kind of thing that I keep waiting for the world to adopt, which is, hey, you know what? I need that data over there. I need this job to run over there. I need this to be like aware of the data over there. And then I want you to move that into my, backend data warehouse and work with it once it gets there. Today we do all the work, right? We run these ETL jobs, we run like a checking, we do polling, we do all this kind of like repeatable work to say, hey, you know what? I'll take care of the hard work in order to like make sure that that data actually is there and get there in the right schema and the right structure, and it was the right size and shape in order for me to move it. And that was something that I was like, hey, you know what? In our system, we could build it so that we could help you do that. We could help reliably get those data pipelines out. We could help you reliably ensure that if the pipeline broke, it reran it or it did this or that and the other thing. And that's very much what we have built as well. And in particular, in the data world, this is incredibly important because while Kubernetes is amazing, it really is built for a single zone in a single cloud only, meaning all that compute that I was talking about expects to be able to talk back and forth to the API server on a very, very regular basis. If you start to lose connectivity for any reason, you're going to have a bad time. Again, this is tweakable, but it's not how things like to work. With data, you don't get that option, right? You don't get to reschedule all the data jobs. You don't get to like move it to a different cloud because it's not working because the data's over there. Like you got to respect that the data's there. It's got gravity. And so you need it to work in that location, even if there's disconnection. And again, that's part of our core philosophy that when things disconnect, it keeps running. When it reconnects, we resolve it, make sure that things work properly and that nothing changed over there, nothing changed over here, that the data is stored and forward, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a real architectural shift, but we couldn't have made that shift without the knowledge that we have taken away from Kubernetes.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And, one of the things that really struck me in our previous conversation was this concept of, data in a particular location in isolation is neither good or bad, but without context, it's hard to know what it actually means. And I think that this kind of felt like the foundation of what you're doing with Expanso, of like, how do you look at that from a central lens in this distributed landscape to figure out how to put context around that data?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And what I will say, the real insight in our previous conversation and even now that you provided was, that context is so important in the world of AI today, right? AI for most purposes is stateless. You say, hey, you know what, make this calendar entry for me, right? You may have yesterday talked to a calendar 17 times, but all you said in this little blurb was like, make this calendar entry for me. Well, which calendar? What time zone are you in? Yada, 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 right? There's all this kind of stuff involved. And that's all context. And right now we give AIs very little context, generally speaking. What does that mean? That means you have to pick up and hand, ideally, seamlessly, so you don't have to actively think about it, all the context involved. So it knows that I have now flown to London, and when I say make this meeting for me, I mean don't take the Pacific time that I'm normally on, make it on London time. And so that's what part of it is. Now that this is obviously an individual thing. The example I give all the time is, let's say I had a cash register, a series of cash registers is sitting in a store, and for the last hours, cash register number 3 sent no data through. Okay, well, why? Right? Like, what possible reasons could it be? Could it be the store is closed? Could it be the cash register was put into the back room because it needs repair and somebody spilled a Diet Coke all over it and they need to clean it off? Could it be that there was a hurricane in the area, right? There's a million reasons that it could not be working. And without that context, I don't care if you're AI or not, you're not going to know what the right answer is for you here. One of the things that we do a lot with Expanso, but I recommend this just generally, is as you think about shipping data, think about adding as much context as you possibly can along the way. Where was this? What happened? What other things were there as well, so that you can correlate those signals together. Don't wait until it gets to the back end. where you're unpacking and trying to do archaeology on this data. Instead, do the work on the front end. It may mean shipping a little bit more data, but your data science team, future you, is going to be so thankful because your answers and responses just can be that much more accurate.
It's interesting, when you talk about this, I'm glad that you're going to solve the time zone problem, because it's a perpetual challenge for me with the amount that I travel. Am I booking this appointment for local time or where I'm going to be? And all kidding aside, I know that this represents massive problems to organizations, really serious problems in terms of lack of context. What do you see are those serious problems, and how do you see teams failing to build and scale modern data systems to account for this contextual issue?
Yeah. So when we go out, we've tried so many different ways to like reach out to customers to try and figure out what the biggest impacts were. And I thought that, one thing that we do at Expanso is like, it's, you could spend 20 minutes with us and we could save you 20% off your observability bill, right? Or your logging bill. Like it really is that fast. It's not a guided commercial. It really is that fast to like save you that much time and money. I thought that was going to be a killer story, right? Turns out no. I mean, people are like, that's nice, but could you just make it easier to debug? Like I spend 50+% of my data science team just doing work on cleaning the data. And it's not even necessarily messy data. Here's a real world story from an energy company that we're working with. They have 2 wind turbines side by side. Each wind turbine is putting out data. They were installed about a year apart, same model, but it turns out the firmware from one is different than the firmware for the other. And what they did was they inserted a column in the data. And as a result, the data from one breaks the pipeline from the data from the other, right? The data coming off this, I know we're in the like future world of AI and whatnot. The data that comes off this is comma separated single string, right? Like I am not exaggerating. It is that boring. And so you add a column, right? Everything runs off the end and so on and so forth. So you need to like figure this out. What we do with Expanso, but again, anyone can do this. We just make it really, really easy. Is we push all a lot of the data cleaning and schematization and structuring to the left, right? So we say, hey, you know what? In order for you to even get in this pipeline, this overall system that you're building, we let you apply a schema. We say, hey, this doesn't match the schema you told us, so we'll send it to this other category for you to go investigate later. We allow you to group and aggregate up front, so maybe you don't even pass through raw data. You send that off to some archive bin, but you send only clean data. And we help you add metadata and monitoring up front. So you can say, hey, the reason you didn't get data the past day is because no one came by or the wind turbine never turned on, not because your data pipeline was broken, which again, like, I tell anyone who's involved, worked with data in the past, either you have had a system where, you didn't get data for 3 days and didn't know about it until you finally checked your dashboard to figure out, what was going on, or you're lying. Like there's just, the amount of monitoring and things around data pipelines is so broken. And what I recommend for everyone is you need to treat your data pipelines just like any other binary code. It's not just this fire hose that you hand when you get to bronze tier. You need to think about it the moment the data enters your system to add the context, to add the information necessary that you're going to need downstream. Because trying to recreate it later almost guarantees you're going to miss something.
Now, this is awesome. But the other thing that's going on is data is becoming much more dynamic. So once you add that context, how do you ensure that it's live and kept up to date through time? What's the technique there?
Boy, I don't think there's any exceptionally good way to do this, right? What I think the best you can do is there's an open source project that I'm working on right now. It's called Makoto. It's use Makoto Makoto.dev. It's completely open source. It's completely Apache 2, and the idea is assume that data will break, right? Assume that things will fail later. The best you can do is accelerate time to discovery by wrapping the start of your data pipeline with metadata, right? Structured, signed, clean metadata. And if you do nothing else but say, hey, you know what? Here's the schema as I understand it. I'm going to use this schema. I'm going to enforce this schema. And here's the source that I got it from, the date, the time, the schema version I enhanced, and I'm going to pass that all the way through, right? And that's it. That's the best you can do. Yes, there are many things you can do. There are wonderful libraries out there, Pydantic and others that do schema data enforcement. Far left, I strongly recommend using other open source projects like JSON Schema to give you a strong structured schema and things like that. But the real world is messy. The real world will break. Your data catalog will be out of date at one point or another, guaranteed. There's no, 99%, 100% guaranteed it's going to be out of date. The best you can do is when you discover that, 17 steps down your ETL line, say, oh, shoot, this is already broken. Or, where do I go to figure it out? And if you have at that point a piece of metadata that takes you all the way back and say, hey, you know what? I ingested this on this date from this wind turbine in central Ohio. Like, there it was. Again, we're not solving the problem, but we're shortening the time to discovery. And truly, that is your best bet, rather than trying to institute a completely hard and fast gatekeeper.
This space of observability is something that's very close to my heart. As a former Silicon person, I love telemetry data, and I love being able to measure and provide context for what's going on at systems. And then obviously in the data layer becomes very interesting. I guess one question that I have for you, we've been talking about observability, metadata governance for a long time, and a lot of companies have invested heavily in here. Is there something that you see that's a repeatable thing where those efforts tend to fall short? And maybe are there more effective approaches that are emerging, especially as we scale, in the way that you do this right?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And unfortunately, you're asking a question like, how long is a piece of string? You're not wrong. Unfortunately, it does tend to be so situationally specific, right? If I was doing a temperature sensor for a building or something like that, each temperature sensor is only whatever, I have no idea, 100 bytes, right? Like, if something is wrong about it, it's probably going to be pretty easy for me to figure out what's going wrong. So what
right?
Exactly. On, off, here's the temperature. You're done, right? And yeah, if they added a column or something like that, maybe something broke, but it's pretty easy to recreate, and the volume is not that big, and so on. The most wrong approach is I will wait until it's centralized to begin, right? I am obviously, I'm talking my own book a little bit here, but if you wait until it gets to bronze tier, God help you, right? Like, the amount of stuff coming in, and so on, you are just going to be in a bad shape. And I will say this, the observability companies, of which we are partners with, almost all of them, don't want this either, right? Even though you pay them a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, to store everything, they don't want that. They would much rather you come in with clean, well-structured, the right cardinality, whole bit, right? They want that up front. But the attitude today is, well, central observability team owns this. They've given me a bunch of APIs. I'm just going to use their APIs in order to get in. I'm not going to do any work beyond that. And then once it gets there, I'll run snowpipes or I'll run airflow or I'll run whatever to go and, finally clean up the data and structure and so on. And again, that is not bad mouthing any of those tools. They're wonderful. But they can only, you can't make, my dad used to say, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. Um, uh, you got to do the work up front. Clean up a little bit, apply some structure a little bit. Be smart about how you ingest and move the data in. Be segmented. It's okay to do these things in a way where it involves a little bit more work up front, but it pays off in spades later. Yeah, it's the interesting thing at Google. A lot of people don't know this. Everyone thinks we tracked everything, and we follow everyone everywhere. I am telling you, raw data, raw logs, raw anything about any human being lasted, unless you had specific like legal authority, it lasted 7 days maximum, and it was restricted to the smallest set of people and processes you can possibly imagine. Like almost no. There was some other stuff that lasted a little bit longer, but it was totally anonymized and stripped and everything like that. But the reason they had to do this was because if the raw stuff gets into your data lake, your bronze tier, right? It's like peeing in a pool, right? Like, all right, there's a little bit of pee in the pool. Like, am I ready to go in? Well, you kind of like hold your nose. How much is pee is too much pee, right? Like, when am I not willing to swim? It turns out with data, it's really, really, really small, because just a little bit can terrorize your entire organization and cause data teams to break and so on. So my recommendation is treat raw data like a toxic waste dump. Don't let it get anywhere near your bronze tier, even if it is nothing more than shipping the raw data, but wrapping it in metadata and say where it came from and let you peel it out later. You're going to be so much happier, so much happier. But yeah, that I think I answered your. It is very situationally specific, but I've never ever seen anyone regret adding context before you move your raw data ever.
So, David, final question for you. When you look at Expanso and you think about what you're trying to accomplish at the company, what does success look like if you take, in the next year or two? What do you want to accomplish with your customers? And how does this change the complexity of what we just talked about?
If I did nothing more with Expanso than everything I just described, right? Like your developers, your data team, your agent engineers, so on and so forth, just make their systems better and smarter because they're cleaner. They're able to focus on it instead of like debugging, why this particular Python library couldn't, unpack this particular date time format, which they spend a lot of time doing. I'm a happy person, right? We help them, we wrap this data and so on and so forth. I think that's hugely valuable. That said, I'm a startup founder. I've never been known to want for ambition. When Jensen from NVIDIA goes and stands on stage and says and holds up a $249 device that could appear in any physical location of the world, I want us on that. We run machine learning models, we run data pipelines, we run everything. We could be on trillions of devices, and help people adopt and use and so on and so forth. So huge fan, would love to like help make that reality a thing. But both taking people, factories, manufacturing vehicles, multi-cloud, on-prem, blah, 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 helping them adopt the future, but also helping people with reams of data today that have no idea what to do with it, right? So, we're in partnership with a couple of folks right now who are doing some manufacturing work. And they have no IT staff in each of 5 different plants. Each plant is generating way too much data today. It is overwhelming their entire upstream bandwidth, so they're not moving it, just sitting there. And occasionally they'll have someone walk over, check some machines, make sure stuff is working or whatever. But other than that, this data just doesn't even exist for their organization, and it could, and it should, and it would cut costs, and it would save money, and it would it would save developer time, save engineering time, save floor engineer headaches, and so on and so forth. If they could do that, I would love to participate in that as well, because that's what we do, right? We help shape the data, streamline it, clean it up before you move it. So you're not moving all this raw data. You're moving just what's important and necessary. So we help with that. So I don't know. Anywhere you have a bit of compute, I think Expanso could sit and help you do what you're doing today better, faster, cheaper. But I try to be very tactical about it and satisfy the customers that we already have, and expand to brand new customers as they discover this particular element.
I can't wait to see how Expanso grows. One final item, and I want to thank you for being on the show. Where can folks find out more about the solutions you're delivering and connect with your team?
Absolutely. So the best place is expanso.io, expanso.io. We have tons of examples. We've open sourced hundreds of examples and documentation, of course. We have scenarios and so on. And we do a lot of stuff. You can try it out for free right now. First 5 nodes free. Go enjoy. Outside of that, we get many like industry specific requirements. Please do not hesitate to jump in our Slack or a Discord or whatever it might be, or reach out to me directly. My email address is on site. I don't believe in hiding myself, or you can certainly mail our general stuff. Tell us the industries that you need, and we're happy to help you map to your solutions that help make your company better as well.
David, thank you so much for being on the program today. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.